Okay, I am instructed it is 7 o'clock. We are out of our recess, back to our regular meeting of the February 22nd Bellevue Planning Commission meeting. It's set at 7 o'clock. We will move to our formal agenda. Our next item is item 1E. For those of you that are just joining us, we've completed our Spark training, which is a agenda computer system training in the new chambers here. And our next item is to approve the minutes of our December 21st, 2017 regular meeting minutes. Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. A second?
Second.
Okay. We have a motion to approve the minutes as presented. Commissioners, please vote. No, not yet.
Tara and Tom, are you in the right meeting, or are you still in the one we were practicing on?
Yes. Sorry.
I should have made note of that. It says electronic voting is in progress.
What are you waiting for?
Tom.
Way to call me out, Chris. Oh my God, after the view meeting details, I should be there.
There you go. Yep.
Okay. Sorry.
Okay. Motion carried. Minutes are approved. We'll move to the next item on our agenda, which is item 1F, which is to accept into record all staff reports, attachments, memos, handouts regarding each application. Staff, any updates?
No.
Okay. At that time, I'll entertain a motion to accept into record all staff reports, attachments, memos, handouts regarding each application, and there are no updates. Commissioners, do we have a motion to approve?
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion to accept in the record all staff reports, attachments, memos, and handouts regarding each application.
Thank you, Mr. Madden. Second?
Second.
Okay, we have a second. Commissioners, please vote. Okay, motion one carried to accept all staff records. Our next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. There are two items on the consent agenda. I will read those into the record. And unless we have any people from the public that would like to make comment, or the commissioners would, we'll make a motion at that time to accept into record as presented. So our first item on the consent agenda is a request to replat, or to final plat lots 1 through 228, outlots A through D, Falcon Point, being a platting of the north half of the northeast quarter, excluding tax lot 1 and right-of-way located in section 7, T13N, R13E of the 6th Prime Meridian, Sarpy County, Nebraska. The applicant was Charleston Homes General. Location, generally speaking, is southwest corner of 48th and Capehart Road. The case is S-1801-02. Second item on the consent agenda is a request to amend sections 5.07.04, 5.08.04, 5.09.04, 5.10.04, 5.11.04, 5.12.04, 5.13.04, 5.14.04, and finally 5.15.04, City of Bellevue zoning ordinance regarding keeping of household pets. The applicant is the City of Bellevue. Is there anybody that would like to come forward from the public? Seeing none, commissioners, any comments on this? Hearing none, motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Motion to.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
We have a second. Commissioners, please vote. Motion carried. This will go to the City Council on two different dates. Item A will go to the City Council on March 12th. Item B will go to the City Council on March 26th. Our next item on the agenda bear with me, I have to scroll slightly, are our public hearings. And prior to starting the actual public hearing, I will announce the case and then ask if there are any updates from staff. After that, the applicant will have an opportunity to present their request. After the applicant has been heard, the public will be allowed to provide any testimony that they would like considered into the record. Those testifying should come to the podium. Please state and sign your name in, as well as your address, and sign in. Testimony should be limited to 3 minutes. I will reserve the right to shorten that time if we have a large number of people coming forward to testify. After any testimony is taken, the applicant shall have an opportunity for a quick rebuttal, and then I will close the public hearing. I will then invite the commission to make their wishes known, which may include requests for clarification from the applicant, other discussion points, as well as making a motion to approve or disapprove, which will then be followed by a second as desired by the commissioners. At that time, I'll restate the motion, and as needed, resolve any issues related to the motion in the second with the commission members, and then call for the vote. As the applicant presents their request, the public testimony is heard, and the commissioners discuss the case. Please address any requests to the chair so we can recognize those and proceed in an orderly manner. And above all, please treat others as you would like to be treated during the meeting when speaking. Thank you. Our first and only public hearing tonight is a request to rezone Lot 2, Wolf Creek replat from BG to RG-20-PS with site plan approval for the purpose of multifamily residential development. The applicant is Wolf Creek Apartments, LLC. The general location is South 15th and Cornhusker Road. The case number is Z-1801-01. Staff, any updates?
No, there are not.
No updates. Applicant, if you would please come forward and bear with me as I do some electronic wizardry here. So what I'm attempting to bring up on the commissioner screens and the screens on the wall is the documentation provided by the planning department. How does that look? Page 1. Does that look pretty good? Pretty readable in back, everybody? Okay. Podium is yours. I'm assuming you've signed in.
I did.
Good. Thank you.
Jim Bouger, Pansing Hogan Law Firm, 10250 Regency Circle. I represent the Mike Hogan estate, which is the property owner. I have with me Kyle Richards, who's also a representative of the owner, and also Scott Brown, who's with Quantum Real Estate, who's the developer of this project that's before the board this evening. So I'm principally here to talk a little bit about the history of Wolf Creek. I've represented Mike before he died a year and a half ago from the beginning of the Wolf Creek development when Walmart first came in, which was the first big retail anchor into the development, and worked through all of the leases and purchase agreements as we developed the Wolf Creek property over the years, which was over 25 years or so. After Mike died, we have sold the Wolf Creek Center, which was the Gordman anchored shopping center, which was unfortunately struggling a little bit for vacancy at the time. We've tried to sell this particular parcel that's before the board today for since the beginning for 25 years. When Walmart came in, Lowe's kicked the tires on it for a bit. Unfortunately, and as if we can, Tammy, if we might be able to put that site plan up there. One of the challenges with this particular site is that there's a sanitary sewer line that essentially runs down the middle of the site, and it's a large sewer line. If we scroll up maybe a little bit.
Yeah. No.
Jim, do you want the site plan with utilities?
Yeah, the utility plan.
Just gonna switch them.
I like it. Thank you. So if you can see where in the apartment complex on the site plan there's through the parking lot, through the middle of the parking lot and kind of angling. Let's see. I got it. You got it? Okay, yeah, that's the that's the sewer line that we're talking about. And so we had a number of, over the years, we had a number of different commercial users who would come in and look at this, and it just became a real challenge. They couldn't fit any site plans in there that really effectively used the ground. So when 6 months ago or so, when Quantum came in, we were really happy to have somebody that was creative enough and worked with the engineers TD Squared to develop a site plan that they were able to maneuver their way around that particular challenge in the site. And at the same time, we were also fortunate to have another user come in. It's actually a 14-acre site that's immediately south of the Walmart, if you're familiar with that particular area. And we've actually subdivided the parcel into a 9.5 acre, which is the apartment project, and then a 4.5 acre site, which is immediately to the north there, which is where the fitness facility is going to be hopefully developed in conjunction with the apartment complex. So we think, and they're really compatible users. They've worked together to put their site plans together so that they have a common sense, a good development. Scott Brown from Quantum is going to talk about their particular project. But because of the retail environment and because of, really our history in trying to sell this site, we think this is an excellent opportunity to create some value for the city. And we think that, if we don't do something like this, then that ground's just going to sit there for a very long period of time. And we'll talk a little bit about some traffic things and other things that are comments in the staff report. But I want to let Scott talk about the project a little bit, and maybe I'll step back up.
If you would, as you get close to the microphone, state your name and sign in, please.
I will. Thanks, Jim. Scott Brown. I'm with Quantum Real Estate, 1925 North 120th Street. And I've got a PowerPoint here, so I'm hoping this will work out.
Maybe.
We'll see.
Let's see how we do here. Okay.
I don't have the controls here, so let me just look at you as I need to change them, or how do I?
Just if you would wave at me, and
I will. Thank you.
And I'll try and get to the next page. So I'm assuming you're ready for page 2.
I'll try and be within my 5-minute allotment here. So Quantum Real Estate, we were formed 17 years ago to own and develop commercial real estate. We have been involved in projects, co-developed Village Point Shopping Center, 10 strip shopping centers, 2 office buildings, and 2 hotels. With the exception of the hotels, we still own the properties that we have developed. Our model is more of a long-term ownership, and we're family owned, by the way. So after the downturn, we shifted our model a little bit because retail is really different today than it was in 2006-07. So we spent a lot of time focusing on multifamily, and where we see a big need in our community, especially when you look at the occupancy rates, there's a demand for multifamily not only in Northwest Omaha, Southwest Omaha, Papillion, Bellevue has it as well. So in 2012, we started our first multifamily project talking about it. So we went through hundreds of apartments to learn them. Sometimes it's very awkward showings, but we learned a lot about what we want to do. Right now in Antler View, 192nd and Maple, Northwest Omaha, we have 384 apartment units under construction. Our partner there is Tom Van. He's been great. Tom he's developed well over 2,000 apartments in his career so far. He's started getting us more into this development arena. So the next one I want to talk about is Titan Springs. Titan Springs is a project that's very similar to Wolf Creek. Titan Springs is located at 66th and Highway 370 in Papillion. I gotta figure out this. You'll see Highway 370 over there on the south side of the property. Where that triangular section is, there's 7 acres there. So we bought this project in 2006, and the 7 acres we had slated for retail. If we go to the next slide. So 2006, we bought the property. 2007, we laid it out. We have a C-store location, bank, a couple of retail strip centers, and 3 office buildings. Access point was granted at 66th Street, so we have 2 access points. Went to the city. Papillion liked our project. We received mixed-use zoning in 2007. Went out to try and find tenants. This is where we learned a lot. Downturn occurred in 2008. And over the next couple of years, any tenant that was looking at Papillion was more interested in Shadow Lake, or more importantly at that time, it was the Walmart Supercenter at 72nd and Giles. That's where the tenants were all focusing their time. Well, we kept staying patient, kept promoting this project. Maybe 2012, 13, I can't remember. Sam's Club announced their location, 72nd and Cornhusker. At that point, we realized that we don't have a commercial corner here. And as much as we can go out there and try and find tenants, nobody wants to locate at 66 and 370 because we don't have the residential. We have the traffic, but they all want to locate over there, 72nd between Giles and Highway 370. 2000, probably, I gotta think about this here. Think on the next slide. 2015, we came up with an idea. We said, okay, we've got a site that we don't want to sit on forever. If we don't do anything with this property in my lifetime, it may remain vacant. So we looked at it and said, how can we put some value? And what we did is we took out the retail and the office buildings and proposed 3 apartment buildings. 80 units, kept the C-store where it is with that entrance on and off 66th Street, the bank, and then another 3rd commercial box. And I don't know how well you know Papillion, but apartments in Papillion are frowned upon. Prior to us, there were only 2 projects I think approved in the past 15, 18 years, one of which was behind a super Walmart at 66th and Giles. The other one was at Shadow Lake, next to the Shadow Lake Town Center. So we went to Papillion and approached them, not very optimistic. It went through exactly what I told you and said, we're either going to sit with this empty for a long time or we can do something here. We can create some value. Surprisingly, City of Papillion looked at it and said, we agree. And with what you do as far as we do quality projects, we're long-term owners. And in this area, they thought it'd be a great mixed-use site. So we received approval in 2015 for the apartments. Didn't have any opposition. 2016, we started construction. And we've already graded the entire 7 acres. We have it all ready to go for the pad sites for the C-store and the bank and the daycare and the apartments. Footing's down. Well, all of a sudden now the issue pops up. Traffic. So we have a C-store now. We're talking to a C-store owner in 2016, and traffic now is going to be a big issue. The state wants to put in a traffic signal at 66th and 370. We don't have a C-store user yet, but they want to put in a traffic signal. But they want the SID to pay for it, and they want the city to be involved. Well, right now we have on 3 corners cornfields. So the only person who's going to pay for it is the SID. Spent some time talking to planning and said, okay, what if we have an idea? So the next slide. And we said, okay, what if we alleviate the traffic issues? If we take out, if you scroll down a little bit, take out the C-store, the bank, and the daycare, and we put in a 48-plex and a clubhouse with a pool and sun deck, and take out that access off 66th Street. At this point now, we can take a site that might have 2,000 cars per day and reduce it down to 200 cars per day. And the city loved the idea, approved the project. We don't have an access point, we closed it down. And right now, this project has been very successful. We're really proud of it. We opened the project mainly fully leased, the first 3 buildings. The last building opened December 1st in the clubhouse. And it's something that we are very proud of. If you keep going through, I'll show you pictures. It turned out great. This is the model itself here that we went through. And the next slide should be the building itself. And you probably drive by 370 and see it. And interiors are all granite countertops. We have great cabinets, stainless steel. So as we're leasing out the first building, we notice Bellevue employees. Offutt Air Force is easy to spot. And then you start looking at the other people that are looking at our apartments. And my partner and I just looked at each other and said, okay, why are they are working at Bellevue? Why are they coming out to 66 and 370 to live? So we started looking at sites down in Bellevue. So, okay, maybe there's a need for another project down in Bellevue. We went through and looked at all the parcels for sale. Didn't find one apartment project that we felt could be successful with the parameters we're looking for. We want to find something that's similar to Titan Springs. Has nearby shopping, grocery store, Starbucks, Buffalo Wild Wings, the amenities that people want. They want to get out of their apartments, they want to go somewhere. Well, if you look around town, there was one site, and that's Wolf Creek. The property was zoned commercial. We thought, okay, this would actually make a really good property. We contacted the Hogan family and talked to them. Initially, difficult because it's 15 acres and we only need 10. And so luckily Planet Fitness is looking in the area. Planet Fitness is always looking to be next to apartments. And so we were both able to work out something, put under contract 5 or 6 months ago at this site. I think the next, so what we did is we started out with this project saying, okay, we are really, this is walkability to Walmart, walk to Starbucks, walk to Panera, walk to Buffalo Wild Wings. The same things we have over at Shadow Lake. Initially, we had 6 buildings shown on the site, be more like Titan Springs. Last month, maybe about 4 or 5 weeks ago, we looked at this and said, this is not Titan Springs, this is better. This is Shadow Lake. Shadow Lake is probably the highest end apartments within 10 miles. And again, at Shadow Lake, you can do that. You can create something really special because you've got people walking to the shopping center. They can walk get their groceries. They can walk to the sports bar. So here what we've done is upgraded this. We have 2 buildings that are 72 units each. Each building will have an elevator in the middle. Not sure if there's been an elevator, if there's elevator product in Bellevue or not, but it's expensive to do, but it also creates a really great product. So the 2 buildings, we worked around the sewer line to create the site plan, and the next 2 buildings are more 30-plexes, which I'll show you in the next slides. So here's what the 72-plex concept is. Really what we're trying to do is copy a very successful project. I think it's in Ankeny, Iowa, and it's done really well. We haven't seen it, but the architect has told us what he's done. He sold us on it. The design guidelines, we need to make some changes to elevations, which we're absolutely willing to do to make sure we meet the materials that are required. So this is a 72-plex. And we can scroll through these next couple. This is a 30-plex right here. And again, the materials will all match, but very high-end, upscale. And we can stay on this one for a second. So we're also going to have garages. On our site plan, we've got 15 attached garages to each of these 2 30-plexes. So that way, half the apartments are going to have attached type garages to the units, and the other half will have to have service parking or exterior garages. But this way, we can accommodate a whole wide range of demographics. We can get the people who need to have the lower rent, people want to have the attached garages, people who will pay a little more to have the elevator access. And again, it's the location here that sold us. And the interior is going to be nice. The next couple of slides are more just the interior to show you what we like to do.
It should be the last slide.
We'll end on the bathroom, the last one. But we've created a project. My partner, I should have had him come tonight. My partner, Rob Llewellyn, he lived in Happy Hollow. He's moved into Titan Springs, lived there for 4 or 5 months now. He absolutely loves it. We're trying to create the same thing here. We're really excited to have a project. We're going to have a clubhouse, dog run, pool, sun deck, dog wash station to keep it all clean. And we're really excited to do a project in Bellevue, and would love to do something that you'd be proud of, and we'd be proud of. So I hope today you can provide a recommendation for approval. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Great. Did you have an additional comment on behalf of the applicant?
Yeah, I just wanted to, a couple of things. There was the two, when we first met with Chris and Tammy to talk about the project, and that they had a couple of concerns that show up in the recommendation report that I'd just like to touch on briefly and be happy to answer any questions you might have on it. But the first thing that they asked for is they wanted to see a traffic study. We understand that the intersection at 15th and Cornhusker is a challenge with the high school and all the retail and everything else that's going on in there. And so we agreed to do the traffic study, and I think if you read the traffic study, what it shows is that this residential use, actually is a better traffic generator, meaning more favorable traffic generator than the retail would be if you did develop it for what it's zoned today. So that's a big takeaway in our opinion from the traffic report. We didn't know it was going to say that when we had a commission, but we think that is actually supportive of this type of redevelopment, mixed use type use in this development. The second comment, and this is really the principal, I guess, comment from the planning department as far as what their support or lack of support is for the project, and that's their concern of the mixed use next to this industrial site where the Blue Buffalo facility is. The Blue Buffalo facility is obviously a nice facility as constructed today. It's great for the city of Bellevue. I think they've been very successful. The folks from Lincoln that started have done a wonderful job in developing a good business, and we wouldn't see that's going to change anytime soon. But I can tell you that Scott is the developer, and HUD, who's going to be providing the financing for the project, are perfectly comfortable with this location, with that particular zoning next to it. They're very comfortable with the Kennedy Freeway being next to it. You'll see that Titan Springs is obviously next to a 4-lane divided highway, just like this project is. So I just wanted to make those couple comments from the staff report, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Great, thank you. If you would have a chair for the time being, and until I ask you to come back up, do we have anybody from the public or anybody else that would like to make testimony in favor or against of this public hearing item? If you would, sign in, state your name.
Jim Risto with the Bellevue Chamber of Commerce. I'm here just on behalf of the Chamber to throw our support behind this project. As I think as Scott and Jim have laid out, the development on that site in the 5 years I've been at the Chamber, we've had a hard time attracting anybody to that site from a commercial or retail. And I don't want to regurgitate what's already been said, but we've experienced the same difficulty. And then some of the things that we've learned in going through this process, that is what we're starting to see the change in development, is this live, work, and play model that is popping up in a lot of the cities. And we hear that from especially people that are moving here from Offutt, that they have these like intermodal models where if you live in an area that you can shop and eat and play and potentially work, it's much more conducive to their environment. They can bike, walk, and whatever. Bellevue really doesn't have a lot of those opportunities, which forces them out of our community to move to other areas. So you look at a site that has potentially been undevelopable for, I don't even want to use that word, but it's been difficult to get somebody to take that site from a commercial or retail. And we are seeing a change in the retail model too, where the big box stores are kind of out. So to find somebody to take a large chunk of properties even become more difficult. So as we started to look at this project, when we met with Scott and his partner, we really liked what we saw. And some of the things from a partnership side that we are hearing, when Offutt talks about having people living within close proximity to the base, but then also providing the work and shop right in that same area. We also have Bellevue University, which is growing their on-campus model, and there's a huge thirst or need for additional multifamily housing for them. And they too, and I don't know if you guys, if you've seen in Bellevue, we have a lot of Chinese students here right now. We have students from India, and our preference is that they don't get cars and drive around a lot. You want them in an area that they can walk, shop, and play in, and possibly have their transport to the university a lot easier. And it's much more conducive to how they function. So from our perspective, we see a lot of value. And we've seen this in Twin Creek. We're working with a developer and a prospect right now in the Twin Creek area. And as soon as they see the apartments behind where Marcus Theaters is and where Baker's is, and you think about this in the same model, They like the idea that the availability of the public or the consumer is right there in their backyard with that kind of that Main Street community play where they can get close to the working and playing. So Twin Creek is starting to see that same flavor where they like that. And then you're seeing it in Shadow Lake, right next behind where Firestone is, and Dick's is the apartment complex there, and it's all in walkability. If you talk to the Hy-Vee manager, a lot of their traffic comes from people walking over. So while you have a lot of people driving, you still have a lot of your public that walks to it. So we think with this property, it's a perfect use for what's sitting in there, and for something that we're really going to struggle to find another use for. It fits within kind of the way the world's going with this whole Main Street work, live, and play thought process. So from the Chamber's perspective, just wanted to come here and say that we support the change, and we would hope that you would consider that too and support the rezoning of this. So any questions?
Great, thank you. Any additional comments from the public? Seeing nobody coming forward, I will close the public hearing. I will turn it over to the commissioners. What are the wishes of the commissioners?
Mr. Chair, I've actually got a number of comments, I guess. When I read through the application, I thought it was a no-brainer for going into that site. And I know Chris and Tammy do a great job, and they don't take lightly making a recommendation of denial. So I talked with both of them. I've also done a little research on it, and I guess I want to lay out why I think this makes sense for us as a planning commission. And with our new whiz-bang software here, I asked Tammy if there's a way we could get on Sarpy County GIS, and we'll take you on a little tour here from, I guess, give you my perspective of how I think about this one. So there's really two issues that are brought up, I think, in the planning report. One is having the residential zoning next to heavy manufacturing. The second one is traffic. So let's start with the first one in terms of the zoning. If we click into this site here. You guys can all tell I'm a hell of a techie on this stuff. Too late. All right, so here's the site, if you can see the mouse there, that we're looking at changing. The issue is what's in gray. So gray is the heavy manufacturing. Well, if we take a quick tour here around this site, you know, just to the south, we've got heavy manufacturing right above it and adjacent. The only thing separating them is the railroad track. If you go by there is Willow Creek. We've already got that. If you go across, which is just south of this site, you've got heavy manufacturing zoned, and right next to it, across another set of railroad tracks, we've got residential. If you then go across Cornhusker, go on this corner, you know, where Offutt Collision Repair is, that is heavy manufacturing. That's our zoning. Right next door to it, we've got residential. If you go just immediately to the east, where Dino's storage is, that is heavy manufacturing. You go right next door, you've got residential. You've also got the multifamily, which is Richmont Village. If we start going north on Fort Cook Road, guess what? We've got heavy manufacturing, and right next to it, we've got residential. You keep going up Fort Cook Road as part of the tour. Again, you've got heavy manufacturing, you got residential next to it. If you look across the street from Childs and Fort Cook Road, we recently changed for Marathon Ventures to put light manufacturing in. That's just one step off of heavy, and again, that is right next to residential. It's not that we haven't done this before. And then if you continue going north on Fort Cook Road, this entire half mile is heavy manufacturing. And what do we find right next door to it? Those are all apartment buildings sitting right, again, they came to us 3-4 years ago. I think we gave them TIF to improve the apartments again. And right next to that is all residential. So again, I don't take lightly the comments of the planning department. And I know from a pure planning perspective, heavy manufacturing next to residential, they normally don't mix. But the reality is we have a number of areas that just based on how Bellevue has it developed, we've got this mix currently. And this would be one more. And I guess my final thought when it comes to the zoning, the folks who are at risk on this is the developer. And I'll tell you why. I shouldn't scare the developer off here. But as the planning department rightly says, you know, if Blue Buffalo goes out of there and this turns into a heavier use, well, the folks that are at risk are the apartment people. They normally sign up for a 1-year lease. Something goes across the street that's god awful, they can move. Think of all of these other places where people built houses and they spent $150,000, $200,000. Those folks are in for a $200,000 risk if what goes in next door changes. So to me, for any resident that goes in here, if something changes in the future, again, the risk is on the developer because they're going to be stuck with empty apartments if something that god awful goes next door. So no offense, developer, but to me, you're on the hook on that one. Second thing, and Tammy, help me out here if we can get out of the zoning and go to aerials. Second part of this is traffic. And we all know, and it's in, I think this is one of Ron Petek's top pet peeves. Every 3 months there's a grade or something in the paper about 15th and Cornhusker. It is one of our busiest intersections in Bellevue, which is what makes it so attractive for people who want to build here. And almost everything is full with the exception of this one 15-acre lot that's still there. Again, I was very pleased when I heard Prairie Life's coming in. I was pleased when I heard we'd have a potential apartment project that fills out this development. And the fact of the matter is it going to make traffic worse on that corner? Absolutely. But is it the fault of that lot? It is not. If you look at the things we've approved recently on the corner of Fort Crook Road and Cornhusker, we got 33 acres, which we're going to have a retail mix, and we've also got apartment slotted for that side of it. All of that's going to impact Cornhusker and 15th Street, which sounds like I'm saying, geez, it's going to get even worse. Well, the reason I mention that, and it's in Mr. Dunn's report as part of our study tonight, and I credit Mr. Dunn, I think he's right on point. If you go to page 5 of our report, you know, he says both the residential and commercial scenarios will increase delay and queuing at the intersection of South 15th Street. However, the commercial scenario will cause significantly higher delay and longer queues compared to residential. Again, because this is currently an empty lot, whatever we put on there is going to increase the traffic at 15th and Cornhusker. That's a fact. But the way it's currently, Joan, for BG, I mean, if Trader Joe's, if IKEA, if somebody could figure out how to make that site work went there, you'd have a hell of a lot more traffic coming to that site with its current zoning. We'd have no discussions about it because it's already zoned properly. So we're actually down zoning this. Back in the old days when we had pyramid zoning, we're down zoning. You're going to have a lesser use with residential. Is it going to create more cars? Absolutely. But is it worse than what we currently have? No. We've got a much greater risk of a heavier use going in there with commercial. And of course, from a business standpoint, and I thank Mr. Risto, I guess, for coming out to remind us of that perspective, but as Mr. Brown indicated, or I guess it was Mr. Boozer, you know, Walmart's been in, I've been in Bellevue 23 years now. I think it's been there damn near that whole time. This lot remains undeveloped. Anytime you drive through a city and you see an undeveloped lot, it's because it's a hard lot to develop. There are challenges. And as Mr. Boozer indicated, you got a sanitary sewer, runs through the middle of that thing. You've also got the creek, which comes from over here in Green Meadows, goes underneath, drops out in front of IHOP and Applebee's there, and goes underneath the parking lot. It drops out right on that northeast corner of this lot. Again, it's another one where you're going, what an ugly sight. And that's why it sat there for so long. So going back to Mr. Dunn in his comments here on the traffic, and again, I think he's right on point. He says, and it's on page 5 of our report, Mr. Dunn commented, the Public Works Department understands there is a need to improve the Cornhusker Road corridor from Fort Crook to 25th Street. He mentioned Public Works Department will be pursuing a study to determine the needed modifications. Once this is completed, Mr. Dunn stated the necessary steps will be taken to program, design, and construct the necessary modifications to improve the efficiency of the corridor, which includes the intersection of 15th Street. Again, we've got a traffic issue there now. This is not the cause of it, and it sounds like we already know it's a problem, so there's going to be a solution. So the solution's coming, hopefully. To me, this does not compound the problem. Again, from a planning department perspective, and Chris and Tammy, I'm not beating you guys up. I think from a pure planning perspective, you don't put residential next to heavy manufacturing. I get it. But we've got so many examples of where this has been done along this Fort Crook corridor just because of how this area developed. And again, the way Blue Buffalo is currently situated, I think it'll be a good neighbor. And in terms of those two getting along, and again, in terms of who's got the risk of this, it's the developer. So if I'm an apartment dweller and I sign a 1-year lease and I can't stand heavy manufacturing next door, I'm moving. And these guys will have already put their investment in, and again, the city will get the benefit from the tax dollars. Now, my gut tells me this will be a good development, it'll work, and again, we're gonna have the kind of that live, work, play concept where hopefully more tax dollars, not just from the real estate increase, but all these folks are gonna be shopping at Walmart, they're gonna be buying gas for their cars, they're gonna do all of the things that, here's one more outlot in Bellevue that's been damn hard to develop, and this can get it done. So I apologize for the long discussion, but when I read this, to me, it's a no-brainer. Again, I understand and get why from a pure planning perspective, this maybe wouldn't make sense and we get the recommendation of denial, but I think this makes sense, and you guys can suspect how I might make a motion if someone else doesn't before me. So, thank you.
Commissioners, any other comments? Thank you, Tom. Yes.
When we think about planning and zoning, the whole basis of modern planning and zoning is to look at a city and area as a whole, not on a lot by lot basis. That's the basis for the comprehensive plan. This rezoning would not be consistent with the comprehensive plan. Presumably, when this property was designated for commercial, industrial, manufacturing, those kinds of uses in the comprehensive plan, there was a basis for that. We've heard some discussion about why perhaps those reasons have gone away. We all understand that there's been a decline in the need for retail, particularly big box retail. As far as manufacturing is concerned, there's been some diminution in the manufacturing base in the United States, but certainly we still see manufacturing facilities, particularly something like the Blue Buffalo operation. We've heard some discussion about how this would be a residential development, which would be similar to the apartments that are at Shadow Lake, the Titan Springs development. We've heard about walkability. We even heard about biking. When I look at this area, it's difficult for me to see why anyone would be riding their bicycle down 15th Street. And it doesn't look like a particularly walkable area. I think that when we talk about mixed use, it's a wonderful concept. But it's a concept that needs to be thought about from the beginning of a development, as opposed to an afterthought. To take an existing development at Wolf Creek, which has some manufacturing, lots of retail, some commercial, and to add a residential development, again, on a one-lot basis, as opposed to how that development fits into the city of Bellevue, the Wolf Creek area, the comprehensive plan as a whole.
Thank you. Any other?
Yeah, I'd like to thank
Matt?
Ms. Smith for bringing up the point about what the focus and the emphasis is on modern planning, because I do think that's important. And as Mr. Ackley suggested, we don't take lightly the staff report and staff recommendation. A comprehensive plan is an idea of where we think our city's going to go in the future. And it's a lot of smart people spend a lot of time putting it together. At some point, a comprehensive plan is just that. And market forces sometimes dictate where the development needs to go. And I think we would be unwise if we ignored that. And as Tom said, based on pure planning, did not consider this project. We don't take our planning commissioner hats off, but sometimes we need to loosen them a little bit and think through the issue. So I would be in favor of recommending approval.
Thank you. Any other comments? Thank you. Go ahead.
Mr. Jacobson, I have some concerns about this issue. One is that we had a comment from Tracy States at Offutt Air Force Base wondering why the city would even consider putting a residential buildings in this particular area since it was manufactured. I wonder have the developers spoken with anybody from Moffett about this? Is it going to affect leasing these apartments to military personnel? I know at one time the military used to recommend or demand that people not rent or buy in a certain area or not go to a certain area. That is a concern I have. I wonder if and I welcome Mr. Brown to come up and speak if he'd like to, but have you spoken with Mr. Dunn about the traffic concerns and other people in Bellevue? Have you spoken with the neighbors who are adjacent to this in the residential area?
If you would state your name again.
Scott Brown, Quantum Real Estate, 1925 North 120th Street. I received this report Friday at like 4:45. So I have not had a chance. And again, by the time I got to the very end, it was probably Saturday morning at that point in time, just to get through it all. We have not had a chance to speak with Offutt yet. We haven't had any indication from any of the neighbors, favorable or unfavorable. In fact, but in the history of our organization, we haven't had many projects at all where we've had anyone not support us. We're not coming in with a low-income housing tax credit project. We're not coming in with something that's usually adversarial. We build quality projects. And so for us, we enhance neighborhoods, we enhance areas. So we haven't had much confrontation. In why Offutt Air Force Base would question whether it's needed or not, I have no idea.
Well, I think that is something that you need to check on. I definitely believe that is something that needs to be discussed, since Offutt is the biggest employer in the city of Bellevue. I'm also concerned in this particular property, it is in a retail area. One thing I hear over and over and over again from Bellevue residents is, why do we keep building apartments? Why don't we have more business? Why don't we try to get businesses to come to Bellevue? You know, there are some concerns. And I don't question that you build quality products. I think that your presentation, everything indicates that. But I think these are some things that you need to follow through on in discussing with the people around and Bellevue residents.
Absolutely. The Offutt Air Force Base has a lot of traffic at Titan Springs. So if you look out in Papillion, there's an awful lot of base employees that live in Papillion. What we would like to do is capture that down in Bellevue. And so we want to work with the base on having those employees live in our residences. Absolutely, we will talk to the base. And as far as traffic with Mr. Dunn, our traffic engineer has been in constant communication with him. In fact, FHU, who did the traffic study, is also doing the traffic study along Cornhusker right now, I think, for the entire area. So I know they have a lot of close communication.
Well, and I do know that with Bellevue West High School being in very close proximity to the land that you're looking at, the traffic from high school drivers is much different than from traffic from someone my age. And I think that's something that you need to discuss also. I think I didn't see and hear at all that you had contacted or spoken with anyone from Bellevue Public Schools, which I think is another avenue you ought to investigate.
Our demographic for our apartments usually doesn't have a lot of families in it. Our demographic is more your college students, empty nesters. We have a lot of empty nesters. It's crazy. So we're going into a society now where people are getting rid of stuff and people want to have smaller. They don't want to maintain houses. They don't want to scoop snow. And I get it. And they want to have garages where they can pull up, elevators if you're in a multifamily. So we're in a different demographic than families. And our rental rates are such that we're not going to attract that family.
Well, you may not attract them, sir, but they're going to be, what I'm saying is they're going to be using the area in front of anything that you would produce. They're going to be using that road, that access way to and from their school. They go through, Willow Springs neighborhood every day. And driving from high school students is different. Driving from college students doesn't differ much from high school students. And I can attest to that because I live very close to Bellevue University, and I see they don't always follow the rules of the road. So I would just make those recommendations to you.
We will absolutely follow with off Air Force Base.
Thank you. Great, thank you.
If I may,
Yes.
and actually, sir, I don't have any direct questions for you, so you may take a seat if you'd like.
Okay.
But in looking at the proposal, I actually found there were more pros than cons in reviewing this. I think this would be actually visually appealing from Highway 75. I think this would be nice to see from the highway. It would add to the aesthetics of Bellevue. I also do think the live, walk, play concept is valid. I think that is something that is kind of the future, and I hate for legacy zoning such as the manufacturing zoning to impede upon that progress. I do think the walkability would be really good in this area. I see the Bellevue University students walk over to Baker's all the time, and I can envision them living here in these apartment complexes and actually walking to Walmart and the restaurants that are nearby. So I just wanted to say that I think overall the pros outweigh the cons, and so I'll put my support behind this.
I have a question for staff, if no one of the other commission members have any comments. I do have a question. Okay. Question for staff. I understand that we did a traffic study and that this proposal actually does increase traffic, but not as much as the current zoning might. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Did the traffic study include anything about walkability?
It did not. It addressed traffic.
Just traffic, okay. So as a longtime resident of Bellevue, I remember when the Bel Air subdivision went in, and what goes around comes around. The Bel Air subdivision was cited as one of these mixed work play areas, and the number of kids that were injured crossing Highway 370 to the Kmart or crossing to the Galvin Road at Mission to get to Baker's is not something to be ignored. Obviously, they didn't hit the nail on the head for live, work, play. So I'm troubled on this one a little bit in terms of calling this live, work, play, because I did walk this area, and I did walk Shadow Lake, as a matter of fact, and I don't know that they're exactly a one-for-one parallel there. Shadow Lake has 6-foot wide walkways. The apartment complexes never really cross any 4-lane roads to get to some of the commercial areas in the Shadow Lake area. The sidewalks near Walmart are on one side of this road, if I remember right. Staff, are they 6-foot wide or 4-foot wide? Or 3 foot? 4 foot.
4.
They're 4 foot. So this isn't standard by any means walkable by today's standards. As far as walking to Bellevue University or walking to Buffalo Wild Wings, that requires them crossing a road that at times is 3 lanes wide each way. I don't recall seeing any designated crosswalks or lights across that roadway at all. From the storage area and the Arby's area, the Starbucks area to Bellevue University, is there sidewalks all the way up to Bellevue University's property across Fort Crook Road? I don't know that there is. So I guess I challenge the concept that this is particularly a walkable area. Although in my mind, I also am appreciative of all the comments that have been made. But in terms of a livable area for walking and biking, the only thing I can see that these residents are going to be able to do in terms of enjoying their off time, in terms of livability, is to move into come out of the apartments and exit to the residential areas and use those resources and those sidewalks that are to the south and to the west. I don't see them walking much to Bellevue University. If we need to put crosswalks in, I guess I'm looking to the city to see if indeed this proposal was made and accepted and motioned by the commission to move forward as approval, what the city would be doing to make this truly a livable area for the residents and the other people that might go in. Because right now, after walking the area, just crossing the street from Walmart to Buffalo Wild Wings can be a little bit of a challenge. And I kind of need my Starbucks in the morning. And if I had to make that walk at 7 or 8 in the morning, I'm not sure, given the traffic patterns or even improved traffic patterns, the walkability of the neighborhood actually takes place. So I'm a little concerned about applying the live, work, play concept to this because it's a legacy area. And I think you hit the nail right on the head, Commissioner, is that it's a legacy area. And somehow we're going to have to make a compromise on that. But once we leave the immediate area of what we're addressing tonight, the walkability of it starts dropping off in my mind. I don't know that it gets any better for any of the other areas around 10 or 15th Street. But if there are families in this apartment complex or people that work in this apartment complex that are going to walk to the Bellevue High School area during rush hour, I think getting across Cornhusker Highway would only complicate matters. And I would urge that that sort of livability gets factored into this if it's proposed and approved. Any other comments by the commissioners?
I do. For Mr. Brown, just a quick question. In my other life, I deal with traffic issues quite a bit. So my concern with this project is the traffic, not just at 15th Cornhusker, but also in Willow Springs. It's already a mess. Somebody said it's a challenge. I would say it's more than a challenge. It's a mess. At some certain times of the day, the times that I'm concerned with, anyhow. So my question is, did you consider the plot of land at the intersection of Cornhusker and Fort Crook? Is that a viable area? I understand it's not walking distance necessarily to those nice places, but
And let me clarify. When we're saying walkability, we're just talking about walking just to Walmart or walking over to Buffalo Wild Wings or walking to Starbucks. I'm not talking about trying to walk to Bellevue University or walk to Chick-fil-A or walk to wherever. I'm just saying that we can just go a couple, not even very far. And more importantly, we're going to be next to Planet Fitness. If we get approved, Planet Fitness will go next door. We're going to have, we bring 204 apartment units to Planet Fitness. Planet Fitness loves the idea of having that built-in type of base. And so when I say walkability, we're just talking about walking to a fitness center, walking to Walmart and getting your groceries, or walking to Buffalo. I understand crossing the street to Buffalo Wild Wings or Starbucks. But I think that's what we're trying to say. We don't have any arrangement with Bellevue University as far as providing student housing. Mary Hawkins is very supportive of the project. If she was in town today, she'd be here to express her support. But again, we're not working with Bellevue University on student housing. This is more just providing housing in Wolf Creek. As far as looking at the other sites in town, we did look at the site catty corner to Bellevue University. That site is going to have different issues though. So HUD is our partner in this project. We've already went down to HUD, met with them in January, went through the project. What's interesting is their concerns are different than anybody else's concerns. Buffalo, Blue Buffalo, if that becomes a salvage yard or anything else, not only do we have an issue, Bellevue has an issue. Walmart has an issue. So we all recognize that we take the risk. But as far as the site, HUD likes this location because we're farther away from the railroad tracks. If you go over here to the other site, it's got low ground, and more importantly, for some reason, railroad tracks heavily impact that site along Fort Crook Road. So that site did not meet our standards, and I don't think it would meet HUD standards either.
you don't believe it'd meet HUD standards because of the railroad track?
Yes, there's a lot of shaking. We've actually been on that land, and you feel the shaking when the train goes by. And so I'm not sure how that impacts building construction and everything else. We didn't get very far. We had our self-test and just don't feel comfortable with that site.
Thank you.
Just a comment as someone who used to be with Union Pacific Railroad Company and in the real estate department. We've sold a number of properties adjacent to railroad right-of-way. I think the old market, the Sodo development, is the Chris Christensen development is a good example of that. So there are ways of addressing any issues that might be associated with being adjacent to a railroad right-of-way.
Or a highway for vibration.
Yeah, a couple of comments. Again, good discussion, which I think is why we're all here. Ms. Kane, I also noticed the comment from Offutt Air Force Base, and I had an opposite reaction to you. My reaction was, why is she even commenting? Because normally Offutt comments if it's near the AQs or if there's something that's going to have height or birds or whatnot, and then they come out and say, we're okay with it, or we recommend denial. When I looked at all of her comments, I mean, she talks about she questioned how it would work in the master plan, has nothing to do with Offutt, indicated it did not seem desirable location for residential development. She's not taking the risk on whether it works or doesn't work. I just couldn't figure out, again, we had a different take on that one. Second thing, when you talked about people come to you and say, why don't we get more businesses in Bellevue? Why do we keep getting apartments? And that is a comment and question we get regularly. But I think two things came to mind when you said that. One is, this is the last lot in the development. There's a reason nobody's touching it. It's been there 25 years and nobody's grabbing it. They've certainly had the opportunity. And it reminds me of the conversation we had with 36 and Cornhusker when we recently rezoned the commercial that was on the ring. I think Cornhusker on the north side, and you'd have 36th Street on the west side of that development. Again, those commercial lots had been for sale for 10, 15 years. They were intentionally set out there to be commercial. Apartments are right next to it, which again, the concept, I think the original developer was, boy, if we get rooftops and residents here, commercial will follow. Never did. And when they came to us, what is that, a year ago or so, and said, we'd like to change our plan and go from commercial to apartments, we all went, boy, we'd be happy to see something instead of having that sit there empty. So again, in my mind, when I see this empty lot, apartments are going to go where they're going to go. As Mr. Brown indicated, they have looked at, again, we all approved a site plan for apartments on that Lockwood site on Fort Cook Road and Cornhusker. So far, we got no takers on that one. And when you look at all the apartments going up in Sarpy County, more of them towards the west, nobody's touching that site. So whatever that means for folks willing to take a risk, I think when we have somebody here that's willing to take a risk, and again, I'd go back to Mr. Dunn's comments in our report. If you go to page 5, he says, in absence of any recommendation involving immediate major reconstruction, this goes towards the traffic, the question becomes one of degree of impact the city of Bellevue is willing to accept versus the opportunity costs involved. Again, whether we're looking at the traffic, whether you're looking at the zoning issue, part of the decision is we have an opportunity cost here. That land's been sitting there 25 years vacant, and it's a hard site to develop. These folks are willing to take a risk, put up apartments. Apparently they've got the Planet Fitness folks going in next door. I don't know if those two are tied. If one goes out, the other goes out, but I'd like to see development come in there, and I think it works.
Thank you, Mr. Ackley. I understand your comments. My concern is, what if, even if the comments, I agree, I'm not sure why the comments from Moffett were there because it wasn't in an EQ's area. But if someone at Offutt in housing, safety, whatever, decides that this is not an area they want their people to go to live, to reside, then it could be difficult. But again, as you said, it would be the developer's problem, not ours. This is a difficult one for me to look at. And hearing the discussions, which are very good, are not helping. Part of our charge is to take care of the health, safety, and welfare of the people of Bellevue. We can't deny that any kind of development in Bellevue, whether it is housing, apartments, any residential type construction, would bring funds into Bellevue. But what's going to bring more funds into Bellevue? Is it going to be this type of development? We just don't know. It's kind of a crapshoot, you know?
Question for staff, I guess, Chris, one of the things that both Mr. Jacobson and I think Mr. Casey talked about is the walkability and sidewalks. And Tammy, I don't know if you can pull up the intersection of 15th and Cornhusker. I used to live about a mile from here, so I went to the Walmart area regularly, but you can see there are sidewalks going to the north side towards the high school and to the south. I mean, those are used. When you're sitting at that intersection, people are going back and forth. So I guess, Chris, from a sidewalk walkability perspective, or maybe Mr. Dunn, this is a question for you in the audience, but are there things we can do, especially if the city is considering, boy, we got to do something with that intersection anyway? Are there things we're going to be doing that would help clean that up? Because again, it's already an issue. This property is a sidelight on the issue that's there.
Could I ask one question in the
Sure.
middle of your discussion? Is staff, how far east do those sidewalks go?
On the south side, they do not cross the railroad tracks. They stop there at 10th Street. On the north side, they do go across railroad tracks. Can you zoom in, Tammy, and show that?
Goes all the way to Fort Crook because you see people walking there.
And if they need to be improved, looks like when they put in the turn lane going into the upper core slab site, they may have been taken out there. But as that area develops, and we're talking with several people about developing that, they will get sidewalks back again.
Okay, good, thank you. Sorry.
No, you're
Go back
fine.
to you.
So again, Mr. Dunn, I don't know if this is a question for you or Mr. Shuchuk, but again, knowing the issue we have, and our report indicates that the city's already looking at, we know we need to do something here. Is that gonna help clean up some of the issues that, again, some of the commissioners are raising as a concern? In other words, apart from this development, are we gonna do some things anyway that are gonna make it better, which would tie this in better? And
I think that's the plan of the study that's going on right now, to look at the area, Cornhusker Road from Fort Crook to 25th, and see what can be done to improve traffic flow in that area. And any widening that's done, obviously sidewalks will be, if they were taken out for widening, they'll be put back in. I just don't know what the study will show as far as what will need to be done there to improve traffic flow.
I guess that would summarize my concern is both with increased traffic for any reason, whether it be an apartment complex or their zoning remains the same, and indeed increased pedestrian traffic, that intersection just gets more complicated, and the traffic to the south towards this proposal the applicants brought forward gets more complicated as well. So as walking traffic as well as car traffic. But great. Appreciate that.
May
Yes.
I jump into the conversation as well? So if we were to go south on 15th Street,
I was just to address the concern about potentially walking from this apartment complex over to the Starbucks, for example, or the Buffalo Wild Wings. How difficult would it be to actually just put a crosswalk across 15th Street? A lit crosswalk similar to that that's located across off at Air Force Base on Fort Crook Road. That would make it walkable between the apartment complex and the retail over on the other side of the 15th Street.
A crosswalk would need to go, I'll say, on the northern part of that stretch. There's not a sidewalk in front of Blue Buffalo.
Mm-hmm.
So any crosswalk would need to be from about halfway up Walmart or north of there to do that. And you really want it at an intersection, obviously. So we're talking all the way, at Pratt Plaza there is where, or next one downtown, where you go right into, next one up. Right in there would probably be the.
Okay. So it is feasible to link the two areas then, so pedestrians could.
Yeah, I agree with you, and that's my concern is that if you truly want to start moving to live, work, play type of environment, the mixed use factors, how we get to that legacy area has to get put in. And right now we see no change in the zoning for Blue Buffalo's at, and so they move semis and people. I'm a little concerned about mixing. People and self-drive cars, I'm a little concerned about mixing, okay? But no matter what goes in there, I don't think the industrial level traffic, the semi-trailers and trucks and stuff out of something like Blue Buffalo is going to change no matter whatever goes in there in 5 or 10 years. And so somehow to align this, I guess I would urge the city to take into impact. And that's my concern is that the integration of the area. So having said that, Mr.
Just got two kind of comments. One is,
thank you.
One of my comments is simply that I'm the unusual in my group of friends that I own a house. I'd say about 80% of everyone that I know hang out with rents. Matter of fact, I have a close friend that works at the bottom of this hill who recently moved to Papillion because he couldn't find an apartment in this area that he liked, the quality. And I actively see people on a weekly basis looking outside of Bellevue while they work here that can't find apartments that really work for them because they don't want to have a house. They want to go to work. They want to come home. They don't want to shovel snow. They don't have pets. They just want to have a house or someplace to live. So speaking on the Offutt issue with that, it's even if Offutt was to go with the most extreme and blacklist this whole area, I believe that there's enough people in Bellevue University, all the other housing areas that would swarm in to fill that need, and market forces would just simply move the people around to adjust. The next thing I'm going to say is one thing that everybody here agrees on is that traffic at that intersection is bad. It sucks. The city already knows that, is already looking at how to fix it because there's some big developments going on there. The intersection during the school day when kids are coming, it's bad. I avoid it. I go as far around Bellevue High School as I can because we should not deny a development of a difficult developed piece because the area already has bad traffic, and this might make it a little worse. But as stated earlier, if a Trader Joe's was to come in there right now, they wouldn't have to go through this process. They could start going right to the planning, permits, development, and that's going to bring at least that number of people. I think that I think it's 204 apartment units right there is actually going to spur more growth. It's going to help fill in those big stores that just got vacated. And I see Walmart's parking lot is so large that I wouldn't be surprised if a scooters just dropped in the middle of it to combat not having to go across the street. The Starbucks across the street, that's busy every day. My belief is that putting more people there is going to spur economic growth, and that the intersection, that whole stretch of road has to be updated, has to be addressed anyway. Denying this or approving this is not going to change that fact. And the traffic is a factor, but it shouldn't be the deciding factor for this project, whether or not we approve it.
Good, thank you. Any other comments from the commissioners?
Sorry, I did have a question for staff.
Okay.
I was wondering when, I guess, the last apartment complex was developed on the east side of 75. Have we had anything in recent years? Or would this be the newest? Well, this would obviously be the newest.
Small.
She said east of 75.
What were the ones up behind Crossroads?
South Roads.
Or South Roads?
Those have been there a long time.
Okay. So there's just not been apartment development.
Bellevue University.
Because I was thinking that would also be attractive about this development, is that we don't have any new apartment development on this side of 75.
Could it be the ones there at
The dorms.
I wouldn't count the dorms. They're not public, but just up there at Fort Crook and Cornhusker, maybe.
Where the trailer park used to be.
Mm-hmm. Could that be that's been quite a while though too.
Yeah.
But they may be the last ones east of 75.
Great. Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, commissioners, what are your wishes? Anybody willing to make a motion?
Could I just throw out one more comment?
One more comment.
One more, last one. So I obviously everybody understands the issue of the traffic at 15th and Cornhusker, but I think the other issue is going to be the traffic going through Willow Springs. And as I recall, there's quite a history in the past with that neighborhood and folks being up in arms with the traffic that went through there. And I think the only way that they attempted to resolve that was putting speed bumps.
Calming devices.
Calming devices, yeah.
So just a comment, I expect there would be quite a bit of opposition from those folks in that neighborhood to this project, for what it's worth.
Yeah, just a fine process point too, to add on to your comment, if I may, that the planning department, as a matter of routine business, you did post the area under discussion for tonight and within 300 feet.
Yes, the post sign there and notify property owners within 300 feet.
Okay, good, thank you. Okay, commissioners, what are your wishes?
Not to add one more question to
one more question,
but
then we're gonna
on the site plan itself, there's no sidewalk put in there. Is that something we're gonna make them do or not?
Yes, they will have to do sidewalks.
Okay, I just didn't see one. So.
Okay, do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion to recommend approval of this site based upon compatibility with other residential and heavy manufacturing in other areas within a mile of this area. And based on that, with a change to the comprehensive plan, I believe that this will be in conformance with our zoning regulations and again, a revision of the comprehensive plan as we normally do when we make a change.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a second by Mr. Ritz. Okay, we have a request to rezone. Motion's been made and seconded. A request to rezone Lot 2 Wolf Creek Replat 7 from BG RG 20-PS. Recommendation is to approve that based on compatibility within 1 mile of the area of other industrial zoned areas and conformance with various other areas that are so developed. Have I summarized that pretty close?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Does that also include approval of the site plan with that?
Sure.
Okay.
And approval of the site plan.
To that point, staff has approved it, I guess, based on your recommendation. Your second sentence does say, if a vote is made to change the zone to approve, planning department would recommend approval to the site plan for multifamily. I would also include that in my motion then that site plan would be approved.
Thought that was part of it.
Seconding that, Mr. Ritz?
Okay, we have a motion and a second of that clarification. We are ready to vote. Commissioners, please cast your votes.
Hold on.
Are you ready? It's open. Okay.
Which one? Okay.
Motion carried. This will go to the City Council for public hearing on March 26th.
For the record, Mr. Chairman, the vote was 7-2.
Thank you.
With Commissioners Casey and Smith voting no, the remainder voting yes.
Okay. Appreciate that. Okay, our next item on
I'd like to thank the developer for considering the site. Again, it's a hard site. You got one more hurdle to make with city council, obviously, but again, thanks for coming. And Mr. Boozer, I've known you for years, and congratulations, the first person to make a public hearing item in this new chamber. Doesn't that feel fantastic?
It's outstanding. And by the way, this is the nicest chamber of any of the municipalities in the metro area. You've surpassed Omaha by a long ways, and the modern facilities and stuff. As soon as you get used to using them, we're going to help.
Is David Black listening to this? Is he listening to this?
Okay, we have.
You've got them beat by a mile, so.
We have to move on to our next item on our current business agenda, which is no business, except for those of you that are leaving now or waiting for me to adjourn. Please be mindful of the road conditions